The C-SPAN Civics bus is traveling the country, visiting libraries, bookstores, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
In a world of half of the people are poor and live in cities, and that half of the people in the world, 3 billion people, are under the age 25, and 1 billion people are poor and living in slums, a planet of slums means a world of gangs, and we see it everywhere, in every corner of the globe.
How do you explore the world of gangs in your book here?
Well, the first thing is to start from the realities of the new global world, and you see the trends are increasingly to increase marginalization as people are moving from the countryside to the cities. Cities like Mumbai have 20 million people in India, unsustainable populations, but vast slums where gangs are a matter of course. So you start from the facts and you're looking at conditions in cities and you see they're breeding gangs.
How is a gang formed?
Well, that's one of the interesting issues, is that classically people talked about the gangs, sort of young people getting together and forming play groups and dropping out of school and, forming identity. What we see today is many different pathways, particularly like in a city like Chicago here, the gangs have been around for more than 50 years. They've institutionalized. So if you're growing up in Chicago in Lawndale, where I do research, joining the vice lords is an ever-present option. Not that most kids do, but it's there. And around the world, the groups of armed young men that are not state, police or military, but are within the underground economy or ethnic militias, are ever present for young people. So there are many different ways that gangs form today. Much different than the way they did research and looked at gangs in the old Chicago school in the 1920s.
Do you consider Al-Qaeda a gang?
I think there's, one of the things I did in the book was to go after this notion that we can define some group as a gang or not a gang, and that what we see around the world is the fluid motion of groups from becoming very politically involved, to being involved in the criminal economy, to being religious police, as we see in some places. And those definitions may not be the best way to start to understand the phenomena of armed groups around the world.
What is the cure for gangs?
Well, the argument in my book is gangs aren't going away no matter what we do. Given the conditions that exist, if there's not a willingness to use development to undercut the illegal economy, then the option has been to wage war, and waging war has just brought more war. So the issue, one of the things I argued in the book was that we needed to rethink this policy about gangs, and that when the UN looked at child soldiers, what they talked about was something called DDR, demobilization, disarmament, and reconciliation, that the realization that child soldiers were involved with something that they needed to be reconciled with society. But gang members are often in the same kind of category, and the object of policy is typically war rather than let's try to reconcile, let's try to bring them into society. So we're fundamentally on the wrong path as far as I'm concerned in the argument of the book. We really need to rethink how we're dealing with these tens of millions of young people involved with armed groups and gangs.
Finally, how did you research this book, and did you work with gang members themselves?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how you can understand gangs without looking at it from the point of view of gang members. My research here in Chicago has been in Lawndale, and I've looked at 4 generations of gang members and looking at how they've evolved over time and understand it. But then I was involved with a number of multinational studies, went to Rio and to Cape Town, and looked at, with other researchers around the world, developed a comparative approach, and I found that the voices of the young people in housing projects in Chicago sounded the same as those from the favelas in Rio or the townships around Cape Town.
The book is A World of Gangs, Armed Young Men and Gangsta Culture. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
You can view Book TV programs, sign up for a weekly email of our schedule, and learn about upcoming programs at booktv.org.